What if the person you thought was your soulmate never loved you at all? What if every kiss, every whispered promise, every shared moment was nothing more than a carefully rehearsed act? Imagine discovering, in black and white, that the very foundation of your marriage, the vows, the sacrifices, the life you built, was nothing but a means to an end. For Prince Harry, that nightmare became his brutal reality when he stumbled upon Meghan Markle's secret diary in the quiet corners of their Montecito mansion. And what he found scrawled in those pages didn't just shatter his heart. It set fire to the life he thought he knew. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. Think about this for a moment. You've given up everything: your royal standing, your home country, your military career, even your relationship with your family. You've defended someone against the world. You've turned your back on tradition and embraced exile, all in the name of love. Now picture opening a diary and reading the line, "I never loved him. I needed the title, not the man." How do you come back from that? Could you ever forgive it? Or would you feel a rage so consuming that the walls around you start to tremble? That's exactly the place Harry found himself in. The world has long speculated about Meghan's intentions. Was she truly in love with Harry, the boy who grew up in Diana's shadow? Or was she enamored with the glittering crown that once hovered above his head? The tabloids screamed one story. Her defenders insisted on another. But for the first time, according to what Harry uncovered, Meghan herself left no room for speculation. She confessed it, not in an interview, not in a public speech, but in the privacy of her own handwriting. And that makes it all the more devastating. But here's where it gets chilling. Meghan didn't just hint at ambition. She didn't simply imply that fame played a role. She spelled it out, coldly and calculatingly, as if she were mapping out a business deal rather than writing about her marriage. And when Harry read those words, everything he thought he knew about his wife, his children, and his future crumbled in an instant. Now, pause for a moment and ask yourself, what would you have done? Would you have confronted her immediately? Would you have hidden the diary, waiting for the right moment to strike? Or would you have sat there in silence, letting the venom of those words seep into your heart until you couldn't breathe? For Harry, there was no waiting, no patience, no second chances. The fury ignited instantly, and it led to a decision that would forever change not only his marriage but the future of Archie and Lilibet. Why does this matter now? Because it isn't just about a marriage falling apart. It's about betrayal on a scale that reaches beyond two people. It's about a royal bloodline, the monarchy's fragile reputation, and the world's obsession with power, fame, and legacy. When Harry and Meghan walked away from royal duties, they branded themselves as victims of an archaic system. They claimed to be in love, united against the world. But if Meghan's diary is to be believed, the truth was far darker. It wasn't love versus the crown. It was manipulation versus devotion, ambition versus sacrifice, a carefully orchestrated game where Harry was merely the pawn. Picture the Montecito home that Harry once thought of as his sanctuary. Sunlight spilling through grand windows, children's laughter echoing faintly in the distance, the illusion of peace. Then imagine the silence that fell when he turned the first page of that diary. Every creak of the floorboards, every tick of the clock, every rustle of the California breeze became deafening. Because when you read words that rip apart the foundation of your life, the world itself seems to stop moving. That was the moment Harry realized he wasn't just betrayed, he had been used. And let's not pretend this is the first time the world has seen ambition disguised as love. History is littered with figures who climbed to power by aligning themselves with the right partner. Kings, queens, emperors, celebrities. The stage is set, the players perform, and behind the curtain, the truth festers. But what makes this story so shocking is the contrast between Harry's unwavering loyalty and Meghan's calculated detachment. He gave her his world. She wrote, in her own words, that the world was all she wanted. Not the man, just the platform. Think of the irony. Harry once said publicly that he knew Meghan was the one from their very first encounter. He introduced her to his closest friends, his family, and, eventually, to the entire world as the love of his life. He spoke of her glow, her compassion, her strength. But behind closed doors, she allegedly confided to paper that her love was never for him. It was for what he represented. The monarchy, the crown, the global icon status that comes with being married to a prince. Now, audience, let me ask you this. Do you believe in coincidences? Was it coincidence that Meghan's rise to fame skyrocketed the moment she married Harry? Was it coincidence that Netflix deals, book contracts, and public appearances piled up as soon as she attached Duchess of Sussex to her name? Or was it all a strategy carefully written out long before vows were exchanged? The diary suggests the latter, and Harry's fury was the inevitable consequence. It's important to note that Harry isn't a man who makes rash decisions easily. He has lived his life under the harsh glare of scrutiny. He knows what it means to be judged, criticized, torn apart by tabloids. And yet, when it came to Meghan, he always chose her side. Against his brother, against his father, against the very institution that raised him. But when your partner puts in writing that she never loved you, that loyalty shatters like glass. And Harry wasn't about to let the shards cut him any longer. So what happens next? That's the question burning in everyone's minds. Because if Harry truly kicked Meghan out of Montecito, taking Archie and Lilibet with him, this isn't just a marital spat. This is exile within exile. This is betrayal turned into war. And the diary? It's the smoking gun that no PR team, no interview, no tearful documentary can erase. Once you put pen to paper, the truth, or the lie, becomes permanent. And Harry is left holding the evidence of his wife's coldest confession. But here's where the tension sharpens. Harry didn't tell the world immediately. He didn't leak the pages to the press or call a press conference. No, his first reaction was personal, primal, and immediate. Rage, fury, heartbreak so raw it left him trembling. And in that state, he acted. He made a choice that Meghan never anticipated. Because sometimes betrayal doesn't end in quiet tears. It ends in a door slammed shut and a family torn apart. And that brings us to the cliffhanger. The moment where Harry, diary still clutched in his hand, confronted the truth that his marriage was nothing but a stage. The moment he realized the woman he sacrificed everything for had never truly been his. And as Meghan's footsteps echoed down the marble hallway of their Montecito home, suitcase in hand, the reality hit like thunder. Harry's world had collapsed. But what he didn't know yet was that the final page of that diary held an even darker secret. One that would not only destroy his marriage, but shake the monarchy itself to its core. Because sometimes the biggest betrayals aren't what you read on the first page. They're hidden at the very end. It started with something ordinary. That's what makes it all the more chilling. Betrayal doesn't always arrive with fireworks, warning signs, or loud alarms. Sometimes, it slips quietly into your life when you least expect it. For Harry, it wasn't an explosive argument or a screaming match that unveiled the truth. It was the simple act of reaching into a drawer. Picture the scene, Montecito. A California morning where the sun floods through tall windows, draping golden light over polished hardwood floors. The house is quiet, almost too quiet. Meghan is out, perhaps on one of her endless calls with PR teams, stylists, or consultants. Archie and Lilibet are playing in the garden with their nanny, laughter drifting faintly in the distance. And Harry, restless as ever, wanders into Meghan's study. He isn't looking for anything in particular. Maybe he's searching for a pen, maybe a notepad, maybe just trying to occupy himself in a room that always felt more like her office than part of their home. Then his hand brushes against something unusual, a leather-bound book tucked carefully beneath a stack of documents. Its cover is smooth but worn, the kind of object you can tell has been opened and closed many times. No title, no decoration, just a plain, dark exterior that somehow seems to hum with secrecy. Would you have picked it up? Would curiosity get the better of you? Or would you have respected the invisible boundary that separates trust from intrusion? For most people, maybe the latter. But for Harry, whose instincts have been sharpened by years of betrayal, manipulation, and press intrusion, curiosity was no longer just curiosity. It was survival. He pulled the book from its hiding place. For a moment, he simply held it. Heavy, substantial, like it carried the weight of something important. The leather smelled faintly of ink and perfume, an intimate mix that made the object feel alive in his hands. He hesitated. His heart thumped harder. Should he open it? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? What would you do if you found your partner's private diary? Would you close it immediately, pretending you never saw it? Or would you dare to turn the first page, knowing that what you discover might change everything? Harry turned the page. The handwriting was unmistakable. Meghan's looping script, elegant yet forceful, like every word had to leave an impression. He skimmed the first few lines, expecting perhaps reflections about the children, or maybe her frustrations with the constant tabloid glare. But what he read instead was a knife straight to the heart. I never loved him. 5 words. That was all it took. 5 words that shattered a man who had already lost so much. He blinked, almost convincing himself he had misread. His eyes scanned the line again. Same words. Same cruel precision. Can you imagine the rush of emotions in that moment? Disbelief. Anger. Confusion. The kind of gut punch that makes your ears ring and your hands tremble. He kept reading. Against his better judgment, he kept turning page after page. And that's where the diary began to reveal its true nature. This wasn't a journal of love notes or reflections. It wasn't a space to capture gratitude or document milestones. No, this was something colder. It read like a strategy log, a private manifesto, a blueprint for ambition. Meghan's words weren't dripping with affection. They were dripping with calculation. I needed him to get the crown. Not the man, just the title. Those were the next words that sent Harry's blood running cold. Think about that. To the world, Meghan painted a picture of a fairy tale romance. To Harry, she whispered sweet nothings about destiny and fate. And yet, in the privacy of her diary, she stripped it down to the bone. Not love, but leverage. Not devotion, but opportunity. Harry slammed the book shut. His chest heaved. For a moment, he stood frozen in that study, staring at the diary as if it might catch fire in his hands. His thoughts spiraled. Could this be real? Could the woman he defended to the world, the woman he gave up his royal life for, really have written these words? He sat down at Meghan's desk, diary in front of him, unable to resist. Slowly, he opened it again, turning more pages. Each one cut deeper than the last. She had written about their engagement, how perfect the optics were, how the world was captivated by their union. She described their wedding, not with warmth or intimacy, but with the cool detachment of someone discussing a publicity stunt. She even mentioned Diana, and how comparisons to her mother-in-law could catapult her into an untouchable level of fame. Harry's hands shook. His breath quickened. The man who had fought for Meghan, who had abandoned centuries of tradition for her, who had stood on stages proclaiming his love, was now staring at evidence that it had all been a lie. But here's where it gets even more gut-wrenching. Meghan wrote about Archie and Lilibet, not as children she cherished beyond words, but as symbols of legacy that strengthened her global platform. Imagine being a father and reading that. Imagine realizing your children, your flesh and blood, had been reduced to tools in someone else's game. Harry dropped the diary on the desk, his face pale, his eyes burning. Rage and heartbreak collided inside him. This wasn't just about betrayal. This was about his family, his children, his very identity being used as props in a performance he never knew he was starring in. Audience, let me ask you, what would you have done if you were in Harry's shoes? Would you confront her immediately, diary in hand, demanding answers? Or would you walk away, trying to process the unbearable weight of what you just read? Harry didn't walk away. Not this time. He picked up the diary again, and with trembling fingers, he turned to the next section. Somewhere deep inside, he knew there was more. That those first few lines weren't the end, but only the beginning of a revelation that would change everything. And he was right, because on the very next page, Meghan's words carried a confession even colder than before. And it was this line, this single line, that turned Harry's shock into fury. But her words about status weren't the most devastating. What came next was darker, sharper, and crueler than anything he could have imagined. I never loved him. 5 words. Cold, sharp, irreversible. The kind of words that don't just sting, they echo. They ricochet inside your skull until they're louder than your own heartbeat. For Harry, reading that line was like being struck by lightning. In an instant, everything he thought he knew about his marriage collapsed into dust. He sat there, diary clutched in trembling hands, trying to convince himself it wasn't real. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe Meghan had been writing in some sort of fictional voice, journaling a character, venting after an argument. Anything, but the truth staring at him in ink. But denial is fragile, isn't it? When the evidence is there in front of you, Denial can only hold for so long before the dam bursts. And the dam broke. He read the line again, slower this time, each word pressing harder against his chest. I never loved him. Can you imagine what that feels like? To realize that every kiss you thought was filled with love was, in her mind, an act. Every tender word rehearsed. Every public display of affection choreographed. He gave his heart, and she wrote in private that she never wanted it. Harry thought back to the first time he introduced Meghan to his friends. The sparkle in her eyes, the warmth in her smile. Was it real? Or was it, as the diary suggested, a performance? He remembered the late nights when Meghan comforted him through panic attacks, the way she held his hand tightly during explosive interviews, the time she whispered that they were in this together. Was she whispering out of love? Or was she whispering to maintain the illusion long enough to achieve her goals? The more he read, the more it became clear. Meghan's diary wasn't a place for dreams or intimate feelings. It was a logbook of strategy. And in that strategy, Harry wasn't the hero of the love story. He was the vehicle, the ladder, the stepping stone. One page in particular froze him. Meghan had written, Harry believes this is destiny. For me, it's opportunity. He represents everything I've wanted. Visibility, access, legacy. I don't love him the way he thinks I do. But I need him. Let that sink in. Not I want him. Not I cherish him. But I need him. That's the language of someone using another human being, not loving them. Now, audience, pause and ask yourself, if you discovered your partner had written something like that about you, how would you react? Would you crumble in silence? Would you confront them in a storm of rage? Or would you walk away forever, no matter the cost? For Harry, silence wasn't an option. The rage was already boiling. But before the confrontation came the collapse. His mind began racing through the memories, replaying every smile, every kiss, every public appearance with new eyes. That day at the altar in St. George's Chapel, was she thinking about him, or about the cameras broadcasting to the world? That moment when he said, "You look amazing," and she whispered, "Thank you." Was she grateful for his love, or grateful for the crown she was about to wear? And the cruel irony? Harry had always feared history repeating itself. He worried Meghan would suffer the same fate as his mother, hunted by the press, destroyed by scrutiny. But in that diary, Meghan wasn't Diana the victim. She was Diana the brand, a brand she wanted to surpass. In one chilling passage, she wrote, Diana was adored, but she didn't know how to monetize her fame. I will. Can you imagine Harry's face as he read those words? His mother, the woman he adored, the woman whose death haunted him every day of his life, reduced to a stepping stone in Meghan's master plan. The comparison wasn't one of reverence, but of competition. The tears came, but they weren't soft, grieving tears. They were hot, angry, almost venomous. Betrayal has a way of pulling rage from the deepest part of your chest. And for Harry, this wasn't just betrayal of a marriage. It was betrayal of his mother's memory. He slammed the diary shut, his breathing ragged. But curiosity, or perhaps masochism, drove him back. He opened it again, searching for some contradiction, some line that might offer hope. But instead, he found more fuel for the fire. Meghan wrote about the engagement as though it were a publicity stunt. Our engagement story charmed the world. The way he proposed, it was romantic for him. But for me, it was perfect optics. A fairy tale for the press. Harry's stomach churned. The words blurred. The proposal, which he had poured his heart into, had been nothing more than a headline to her. A tool for global adoration. He turned another page. The wedding cemented me. It wasn't about vows. It was about visibility. Millions watched. Billions commented. That's the kind of power you can't buy. The vows. The promises. The tears in his eyes as he said, I do. Reduced to content for Meghan's career. Audience, ask yourself this. Have you ever felt used? Maybe by a friend who only called when they needed something. Maybe by a boss who praised your work but never valued you as a person. Multiply that by 1,000, and you might begin to touch the level of devastation Harry felt in that moment. And yet, in the pages of that diary, Meghan wasn't ashamed. She wasn't conflicted. Her words weren't written with guilt. They were written with pride. She believed she had played the game and won. Harry's fists clenched. His jaw tightened. But here's the twist. The diary wasn't just cold. It was detailed. Too detailed. Meghan had outlined her ambitions step by step. as if she were documenting a business plan. Each phase of her relationship with Harry, meeting, engagement, wedding, children, was framed as a stage in her journey to global influence. And if that wasn't cruel enough, Meghan even compared Harry to others. Harry's not the most powerful man I could have married, but he's the most useful. His story, his trauma, his mother, those make him marketable. He gives me what no one else could: global attention. Useful. Marketable. Imagine being a husband and reading those words. Not loved, not cherished, not even respected, just useful. Harry's chest tightened. He felt sick. He wanted to scream. But the walls of the Montecito mansion swallowed his silence. And then came the line that changed everything. The line that pushed Harry past heartbreak and into fury. Because Meghan didn't just write that she never loved him. She wrote what she truly loved instead. And that confession wasn't about Harry. It wasn't about the children. It wasn't even about the monarchy. It was about something far more dangerous. But that, dear viewer, wasn't the most devastating revelation. Because Meghan's true confession of love, what she admitted she could never resist, was still waiting on the next page. And when Harry read it, it made his blood run colder than ever before. What do people really want in life? Some say love. Others say happiness. For Meghan, at least according to her diary, it wasn't love. It wasn't even happiness. It was status, power, recognition. She didn't want the man. She wanted the monarchy. And as Harry flipped through those pages, the obsession leapt off the paper like fire, burning every illusion he had once held about her. One particular entry stood out. Meghan had written, in bold, deliberate script, "Titles are everything. Without the title, there is no platform. Without the platform, there is no power. And without power, there is no Meghan." Harry froze when he read it. For him, titles were burdens. Shackles. He had spent his life trying to escape the suffocating weight of being a prince. But for Meghan, the title wasn't a curse, it was the prize. The very thing she claimed had trapped him was the thing she craved most. Now ask yourself, can two people survive a marriage when one sees the crown as chains and the other sees it as diamonds? That's not love. That's a collision waiting to happen. Harry thought back to the day they first spoke about titles. He remembered Meghan saying she didn't care about royal designations, that she only wanted him. He remembered her claiming she would be happy living a quiet life, raising their children in peace. But the diary told another story, a darker one. Harry thinks escaping the palace is freedom. For me, it's limitation. A duchess can command rooms. A wife without a title is just another woman. Those words hit him like a hammer. Because what did they mean for their entire escape to freedom narrative? The world believed Harry and Meghan fled the UK to protect themselves, to live outside the glare of monarchy. But if Meghan's diary was to be believed, her true anger wasn't at being royal. It was at losing the status that came with it. And here's the irony. Meghan built her brand on being the woman who didn't care about titles. She presented herself as the independent spirit, the rebel bride who walked away from royalty to live authentically. But in private, she was obsessed with the very thing she publicly rejected. That contradiction is what made Harry's stomach turn. It got worse. In another passage, Meghan detailed how she viewed titles not just for herself, but for their children. Archie and Lilibet must carry royal titles. Without them, their future is limited. They are not just my children. They are extensions of the legacy I am building. Their names, their photos, their titles, these are tools. Tools. She called their children tools. Imagine Harry's heart breaking in that moment. His children weren't just Archie and Lilibet to Meghan. They weren't simply son and daughter. They were bargaining chips. A brand strategy. Now, I want you to think about this, audience. What kind of mother writes that her children are tools? How could Harry read those words and not feel sick? The boy who lost his mother, who vowed to protect his own children from the cruelty of fame, now faced the realization that his wife viewed their kids not as lives to cherish, but as assets to leverage. Harry slammed the diary shut again, his hands shaking. But the pages haunted him, pulling him back, demanding to be read. So he opened it once more. There, he found Meghan reflecting on her first months inside the royal family. She wrote about being frustrated with protocol, but not because of its restrictions. No, her frustration was that it kept her from climbing faster. They want me to follow. I want to lead. The crown is slow, old, deliberate. I am fast, ambitious, modern. Harry doesn't see that. He thinks we're breaking free. I know we're just beginning. Think about that. While Harry thought he was liberating them, Meghan thought she was launching herself. His idea of freedom was her idea of foundation. Two completely opposite visions, heading straight for collision. Harry's head spun. He remembered those nights they talked about leaving the UK, the late-night conversations about wanting peace, about carving their own path. But now, reading her private words, he realized she had never wanted peace. She wanted prominence. Their escape wasn't an end, it was her beginning. And here's where it gets chilling. Meghan didn't just write about wanting status. She wrote about needing to be above everyone. She compared herself to other royals, to celebrities, even to Harry himself. I will not be overshadowed. Not by William, not by Kate, not by Harry. The world must see me. I will not settle for being his wife. I will be the story. Harry's eyes widened. She didn't just want to be part of the narrative. She wanted to own it, control it, dominate it. And suddenly, all the interviews, all the documentaries, all the PR deals made sense. They weren't about sharing her truth. They were about ensuring the spotlight never left her. Audience, let me ask you this. Have you ever known someone who couldn't stand to be in the background? Someone who always needed the attention, the credit, the spotlight? Now imagine being married to that person when the entire world is watching your every move. That wasn't just a marriage, it was a ticking time bomb. Harry's rage deepened as he read on. Meghan had written about Hollywood with the same fervor she wrote about royalty. For her, the monarchy wasn't the endgame. It was the launchpad. Royalty gave me visibility. Hollywood will give me immortality. Immortality. That was the word that chilled Harry's blood, because it revealed this wasn't about love, family, or even happiness. It was about carving herself into history, no matter the cost. And the cruelest part? Meghan didn't hide her detachment from Harry in these pages. She admitted it outright. Harry is emotional, vulnerable, scarred. He loves too deeply. That makes him easy to control. His devotion blinds him. He will always protect me, no matter what I write here. That line stabbed him deeper than any other. Because it was true. He had always defended her. Against his family. Against the press. Against the world. And now he realized she knew it. She counted on it. Harry's face burned red as he read it again and again. The man who thought he was her rock had been reduced to her shield. She saw him not as a partner, but as protection. Not as a husband, but as a tool. And yet, Harry couldn't stop turning the pages. Because deep down, he needed to know how far it went. The answer came fast. Meghan didn't just want status. She wanted to be bigger than the monarchy itself. She wrote about Diana again, and this time, the words were venomous. Diana was beloved because she defied them. I will be worshipped because I'll outshine them. Harry dropped the diary, his chest heaving, his mind spinning. Outshine Diana? His mother? The woman he still mourned every day? This wasn't just about Meghan wanting status. This was about her wanting to dethrone his mother's memory. That realization broke him. But the diary wasn't finished. There was more. Because the next page didn't just talk about status. It revealed Meghan's most dangerous obsession yet. An obsession that reached beyond Harry, beyond the monarchy, and into territory that would shake him to his very core. But Meghan's hunger for status wasn't the final blow. Because on the very next page, Harry discovered something far worse. Not just ambition, not just status, but a vow. A vow to become bigger than Diana herself. For Harry, his mother Diana wasn't just a parent. She was a myth, a symbol, a wound that never healed. Her name still echoes in every corner of his life. Her compassion, her rebellion, her tragedy. And Meghan knew that. From the very beginning, she knew. So when Harry turned to the next page of the diary and saw Diana's name scrawled in Meghan's handwriting, his breath caught in his throat. He braced himself, hoping to see words of reverence, admiration, maybe even grief. But what he found was something else entirely. Diana was adored. But I will be worshipped. Worshipped. The word stabbed through Harry's chest like ice. His mother had been a victim of relentless press, a woman destroyed by the very spotlight Meghan claimed to hate. And yet, in Meghan's eyes, Diana wasn't a warning. She was a benchmark. A challenge to surpass. Audience, let me ask you, how would you feel if your spouse wrote about competing with the ghost of your dead mother? Would you feel sick? Betrayed? Angry beyond words? Because that's exactly what surged through Harry in that moment. The diary didn't stop there. Meghan compared herself to Diana in detail. She wrote about how Diana's fashion choices, her humanitarian work, even her tragic death created a legacy of global adoration. And then she wrote something that made Harry's hands shake uncontrollably. Diana didn't know how to use the fame she was given. I will. She inspired sympathy. I will inspire devotion. She was loved. I will be untouchable. Untouchable. That was the word that broke Harry's composure. His mother had been hunted, chased, cornered into a Paris tunnel where she took her last breath. Untouchable was the last thing Diana had been. And here was Meghan, turning his mother's pain into a competition, a ladder to climb higher than anyone before her. Harry pushed the diary away, his chest heaving. He paced the room, his thoughts a storm. Diana was sacred. She was the reason Harry fought for love, for freedom, for family. And Meghan, his wife, had written that she would use Diana's memory not as inspiration, but as a stepping stone to eclipse her. Now think about this. To the public, Meghan often spoke of Diana with respect. She gave interviews about how Diana would have supported her, how she felt connected to her late mother-in-law's struggle. People believed she was channeling Diana's spirit. But in private, in the raw honesty of her diary, Meghan wasn't channeling Diana. She was competing with her. And for Harry, that wasn't just betrayal. That was blasphemy. Memories of his childhood flooded back. Harry, at just 12 years old, walking behind Diana's coffin, the cameras flashing, the world watching. The tears he fought to hide. The vow he made silently that day, never again. Never again would he let the woman he loved be destroyed the way Diana had been. And yet, Meghan's words twisted that vow into mockery. Because she wasn't afraid of being destroyed. She was determined to rise higher than Diana ever had. Harry sat back down, pulling the diary toward him again, as if daring it to prove him wrong. But each line only dug the knife deeper. Harry carries her grief. I carry her opportunity. Where she fell, I will rise. He whispered the words aloud in disbelief, as though saying them might make them less real. But the sound of his own voice only made it worse. And then came the most devastating passage of all. Diana became the people's princess. But I will become the people's queen, even if there's no crown. The people's queen. It was cruel irony. Meghan admitted she didn't need the monarchy's crown to achieve her goal. She just needed the legacy, the platform, and Harry's name. To her, the man sitting across from her at the dinner table wasn't a husband. He was a bridge to Diana's immortality. Audience, let that sink in. Could you live with someone who wrote that about your mother? Someone who not only failed to respect her memory but promised to overshadow it? Harry slammed the diary shut again. His breathing was ragged, his vision blurred with rage and grief. For years, he had been haunted by the thought that Meghan was seen as the new Diana. He defended her against comparisons, insisting Meghan was her own woman, insisting his mother's legacy was safe. But now, he realized Meghan herself had been feeding that comparison, nurturing it, weaponizing it. And the betrayal deepened. Because Meghan didn't just want to be bigger than Diana. She wanted to do it by rewriting the very story that defined Diana's tragedy. She died a victim. I will live as a victor. Harry's hand shook as he read that line. Victim. Victor. The words pulsed in his brain like poison. His mother wasn't a victim to him. She was a martyr, a warrior who had been crushed by forces beyond her control. And here was Meghan, reducing her to a cautionary tale in order to declare herself triumphant. That was the moment Harry's heartbreak transformed into fury. A deep, roaring anger he hadn't felt in years. Because this wasn't just betrayal, it was desecration. Desecration of the one person Harry still mourned every day of his life. Now imagine the irony of this. Harry had married Meghan believing she was his mother's kindred spirit, that she understood Diana's pain, that she would honor her legacy. And here, in black and white, Meghan had admitted she didn't just want to honor Diana. She wanted to eclipse her. And yet, Harry couldn't stop reading. He needed to know how far it went. The final line of that chapter in the diary sealed it. I will be remembered longer than Diana. Harry may not see it yet, but one day the world will. That was it. The last straw. The breaking point. Harry felt his chest cave in, his stomach twist, his fists tighten until his knuckles turned white. Meghan didn't just betray him. She betrayed Diana. She betrayed the very memory that defined his life. And that betrayal demanded confrontation. Harry stood up, diary in hand. his footsteps pounding against the floor as he left the study. Rage coursed through his veins. His world had collapsed in a matter of minutes. But Meghan had no idea yet what he had discovered. No idea that her carefully hidden words had detonated the foundation of their marriage. And as Harry stormed toward the door, ready to face the woman who had written that she would outshine Diana, his fury reached a boiling point. Because what came next wasn't just a conversation. It was the breaking point. The moment Harry would demand answers, the moment Meghan's mask would be ripped away, the moment their entire marriage would hang in the balance. But when Harry finally confronted Meghan, what he heard come out of her mouth wasn't an apology, wasn't even denial. It was something far darker, and it changed everything. The diary was still in his hands when Harry found her. His grip so tight the leather cover bent under his fingers. His footsteps echoed through the Montecito mansion, not with the calm of a husband looking for his wife, but with the thunder of a man walking toward war. Every step was heavy, sharp, fueled by rage. Meghan was in the kitchen. The hum of an expensive espresso machine filled the air, the scent of freshly brewed coffee curling into the sunlight. She looked up, startled, as Harry appeared in the doorway. Her face lit up with its usual practiced smile. But that smile faltered when she saw what he was holding. The diary. For a moment, silence. A silence thick enough to choke on. Harry's voice broke it, low and raw, trembling with fury. What is this? He slammed the diary down on the marble counter, the sound cracking through the room like a whip. Meghan flinched, her hand hovering over her coffee cup. Harry, she began softly, her tone carefully measured. That's private. Private. That one word snapped something inside him. Private? Private. His voice rose, the years of swallowed anger bursting free. You wrote that you never loved me. You wrote that I was just a title, just a stepping stone. Do you have any idea what it feels like to read that? Meghan's eyes darted to the diary and back to him. Her lips parted as if to speak, but nothing came out. For once, the actress didn't have her lines ready. Harry leaned in, his face twisted with hurt and rage. Was any of it real? The wedding? The vows? The nights you told me you loved me? Was it all a lie? She swallowed hard, her silence betraying her. Audience, pause here. Imagine asking the person you gave everything for if they ever truly loved you, and their silence answers louder than any words ever could. Could you stand it? Could you forgive it? Meghan finally spoke, her voice calm but cold. Harry, you don't understand. His fist slammed against the counter. Don't tell me I don't understand. I read it with my own eyes. You compared yourself to my mother. You said you would outshine Diana. Do you know what that does to me? Do you know what that means? Meghan's mask cracked, frustration flashing in her eyes. I was venting. It was personal. Everyone writes things they don't mean in a diary. Harry shook his head, tears threatening. Don't you dare insult me with excuses. These weren't the words of someone venting. They were the words of someone plotting. Cold. Calculated. You called our children tools. You call me useful. That's not venting, Meghan. That's who you are. The air between them grew hot, suffocating. Meghan crossed her arms, her composure beginning to fray. You don't know what it's like to be me. To be constantly judged, constantly doubted. That diary was my release, my way of taking control of my own narrative. Harry's voice cracked. Taking control? By writing that you never loved me? By promising to be bigger than my mother? Her eyes hardened. The softness vanished, replaced by steel. You think Diana was perfect. She wasn't. She played the media, Harry. She knew the power of attention. All I did was admit the truth. You don't survive in this world by being meek. You survive by being seen. That was it. That was the breaking point. Harry staggered back as if struck. Don't you dare compare yourself to her. Don't you dare twist her legacy into your excuse for this betrayal. His voice dropped, trembling with grief. She died because of that spotlight. And you're chasing it like it's the only thing that matters. For a moment, Meghan didn't answer. Then she shrugged slightly, her tone cool and cutting. Maybe it is. Harry's chest heaved. He stared at her as if she had just revealed herself to be a stranger. The woman he thought he had married, the woman he thought he had protected, was gone. Or maybe she had never been there at all. Do you even hear yourself? He whispered. You're admitting it. Right here. Right now. She stepped closer, her voice sharp now, stripped of any pretense. And what if I am? What if I did marry you for the platform? For the status? For the crown? Do you think I would have gotten this far without you? Do you think anyone would care who Meghan Markle was if not for Harry? The words hit like bullets. Audience, what would you have done in that moment? Shouted. Walked out. Broken down? Harry did all three at once. His fist slammed into the counter again. His voice broke into a roar, and his tears spilled freely down his face. I gave up everything for you. My family, my country, my military career, my home. And you stood there smiling while secretly writing that it was all a lie. Meghan didn't flinch. She stood tall, almost defiant. And yet, here we are. You gave it up because you wanted to. Don't blame me for your choices. The room fell into silence again. But this silence wasn't confusion. It was the silence of a marriage snapping in half. Harry's eyes locked on hers. For the first time, he wasn't pleading. He wasn't defending. He wasn't trying to fix anything. He was done. You need to leave, he said, his voice low, steady, final. Meghan blinked, caught off guard. What? You heard me. Get out. Her jaw tightened. This is my house too. Harry shook his head. Not anymore. Archie and Lilibet stay with me. You're done. Meghan's composure faltered. The practiced calm slipped into shock, then fury. You can't do this. I already have. The two of them stood there, staring at each other across the marble counter, the diary still lying between them like a bomb that had just gone off. Harry's chest heaved. Meghan's eyes blazed, and the silence between them screamed louder than any words could. And then, Harry turned away. He picked up the diary, tucked it under his arm, and walked toward the stairs. His final words echoed behind him. I won't let you use me anymore. And I won't let you use our children. Meghan stood frozen, her face pale with fury and disbelief. She had never seen him like this, never heard him speak with such finality. And as Harry disappeared upstairs, Meghan's coffee sat untouched, growing cold in the sunlight. The sound of her own shallow breathing filled the room. For the first time, she realized the game was slipping out of her hands. But Harry didn't yet know. The confrontation was only the beginning. Because what came next wasn't just anger. It was action. The expulsion. The moment Meghan would be forced out of Montecito, suitcase in hand, the illusion shattered for good. But when Harry made good on his words and told Meghan to leave, the way she reacted, the desperate move she made next, was something even he hadn't expected. The words still hung in the air like smoke. You need to leave. Harry had said it once. Calmly, firmly, and he meant it. Meghan's mind reeled. She had faced criticism, headlines, scandals, even open hostility from the British establishment, but never this. Never Harry turning against her. For years, she had relied on his loyalty, his blind devotion. He had always defended her, always chosen her over everyone else. But now, the unthinkable had happened. He had chosen himself. The Montecito mansion, usually filled with curated peace and crafted luxury, suddenly felt like a battlefield. The espresso machine hissed in the background like a warning, the untouched coffee cooling on the counter, and Meghan's chest rose and fell as she tried to process the command. You're not serious, she finally whispered, her voice shaking with something between fury and fear. Harry turned, his eyes blazing with the kind of finality she had never seen before. Deadly serious. I won't let you stay here another day. The words cracked her composure. Meghan's face flushed, her lips curled back. You don't get to decide that. This is our home, our life, our family. You don't get to erase me just because you don't like what you read. Harry's fist slammed against the doorframe, his anger boiling over. Don't twist this. Don't you dare make this about me being irrational. You wrote it, Meghan. You wrote that you never loved me. You wrote that I was just a title, that our children are tools, that my mother's legacy was something to outshine. Those weren't my words. They were yours. And now, you can live with the consequences. She tried to laugh it off, but the sound was hollow. You're blowing this out of proportion. It's a diary, a private place to vent. Do you know how many women write things they don't mean when they're frustrated? Harry stepped closer, his voice low, dangerous. This wasn't frustration. It was a blueprint. Every word was calculated. You weren't venting, you were confessing. For the first time in a long while, Meghan felt cornered. No cameras, no PR team, no sympathetic interviewer to spin the story. Just her, Harry, and the truth she could no longer bury. And then came the words she didn't expect. Pack your things, Harry said. His voice steady, unshakable. You're leaving tonight. Her breath caught. And what about Archie and Lilibet? They stay with me, he snapped. I won't let you drag them into your obsession for status. They deserve better than being props in your performance. The statement cut deep. Meghan's eyes widened, her control slipping. You can't take my children from me. Harry's face twisted in pain. They're not your children to use, Meghan. They're ours. And I'll protect them from you if I have to. The silence that followed was deafening. Archie's laughter floated faintly from the garden, innocent, untouched by the storm brewing inside. Harry's heart twisted at the sound. He thought of his own childhood, of being just a boy when he lost Diana. He thought of the vow he made then, to shield his children from the same agony. And in that moment, his mind was clear. If Meghan could write such things about their children in her diary, she couldn't be trusted to raise them. Meghan's mask finally cracked, her voice breaking into something raw and panicked. Harry, you can't do this. Think about what you're saying. Think about how this looks. Do you know what the press will do with this if it gets out? Harry shook his head. I don't care about the press. I don't care about the optics. I care about Archie and Lilibet. And I care about not living a lie anymore. Meghan's voice dropped to a whisper, her tone laced with desperation. If you push me out, if you take them from me, I swear you'll regret it. Harry froze. The threat hung in the air like poison. He studied her face, searching for any trace of the woman he once loved, but all he saw was calculation, control, and rage. Is that who you are now? He said quietly. Threats? Is that all that's left? Her eyes glistened, but it wasn't with tears, it was with fury. She grabbed her phone off the counter, clutching it like a weapon. I'll call my lawyers. My team. You can't just erase me. Harry's voice sharpened. Call whoever you want. But nothing changes the truth. Nothing changes what you wrote. The standoff was brutal. Neither moved. Neither blinked. The diary lay between them still, like a third presence in the room, a silent witness to their destruction. Finally, Meghan's composure cracked entirely. She stormed past Harry, her heels clicking furiously on the polished floor, heading upstairs to their bedroom. Harry followed at a distance, his chest tight, his breathing ragged. Upstairs, Meghan flung open the closet doors, yanking dresses and handbags into a suitcase with frantic energy. The sound of zippers and hangers filled the air. Harry stood in the doorway, watching, his face unreadable. Take whatever you want, he said coldly. But you're not taking them. Her head snapped toward him, eyes blazing. You can't do this to me. I gave up everything for you too. My career, my home, my independence. Do you think I'll walk away quietly? You're delusional. Harry's jaw clenched. You didn't give up anything. You traded it. You traded it for the crown, for the titles, for me. And when you didn't get everything you wanted, you turned me into the villain. But I won't let you use me, or our children, anymore. The suitcase slammed shut with a violent snap. Meghan dragged it toward the door, her movements sharp, unsteady. Archie's footsteps pattered down the hall, his small voice calling, Mummy? Meghan froze. Her fury flickered into something else, panic, vulnerability. She turned, forcing a smile, crouching down to hug him. But Harry stepped forward, gently but firmly placing a hand on his son's shoulder. Archie, go back to the garden with your sister, Harry said softly. His voice cracked, but his tone was steady. Daddy needs to talk to Mummy right now. The boy looked confused, glancing between them, sensing the tension he couldn't understand. Slowly, he nodded and shuffled away. Harry's chest constricted as he watched him go. The last thing he wanted was for the children to see the explosion of their family. Meghan's eyes followed Archie until he was gone, and then they snapped back to Harry. You're making a mistake. A huge one. You'll regret this for the rest of your life. Harry's voice broke into a roar. The only mistake I ever made was believing you loved me. The words landed like a knife. Meghan's face twisted, her composure unraveling completely. She dragged the suitcase down the stairs, her phone buzzing in her hand as she furiously typed messages. Harry followed, silent, carrying the diary like a weapon of truth. By the time she reached the front door, Meghan turned sharply, glaring at him. This isn't over. You can't silence me. You can't bury me. Harry stared back, his face pale but resolute. Then let the world hear it. Let them hear who you really are. Because I'm done protecting you. And with that, he opened the door. Sunlight spilled into the hallway, casting sharp shadows across the marble floor. Meghan hesitated, suitcase in hand, her jaw tight, her eyes locked on him. She expected him to break, to soften, to take it all back. He always had before, but not this time. And so, with one last glare, Meghan stepped across the threshold. The door closed behind her with a final, echoing thud. Inside, the silence was deafening. Harry leaned against the door, his chest heaving, the diary clutched tightly in his hand. Outside, Meghan's heels clicked across the driveway as her figure disappeared into the California sun. But this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Because the moment Meghan left that mansion, the outside world began to stir. The neighbors noticed. The press caught wind. And soon, the entire globe would know that Prince Harry had thrown Meghan Markle out of Montecito. And yet, the biggest shock was still to come. Because Harry hadn't read the final section of the diary. And within those pages was a revelation so dark, so devastating, it would not only destroy his marriage, but ignite a firestorm that could engulf the monarchy itself. But before Harry could even catch his breath, the diary's final secret was waiting to be discovered, and it would turn his fury into something far more dangerous. The door had slammed. Meghan was gone. For a brief moment, Montecito was silent, the diary still clutched in Harry's hand like a cursed relic. But silence never lasts long in the world of royalty. Because in the very same breath that Meghan's heels clicked down the driveway, whispers began to ripple far beyond the mansion gates. Montecito was no ordinary neighborhood. It was a fishbowl. Neighbors talked. Staff talked. And within hours, the world's most insatiable beast, the press, had its teeth in the story. By morning, headlines screamed across tabloids and digital screens alike. Harry throws Meghan out of Montecito. Royal marriage explodes in California meltdown. Archie and Lilibet caught in the crossfire. The images were grainy at first. Meghan storming into a waiting black SUV, her sunglasses shielding her fury, her phone pressed tightly to her ear. The suitcase wheels clattered behind her. Harry's absence in those photographs told the story just as powerfully. He wasn't chasing. He wasn't begging. He was finished. But it wasn't just the tabloids frothing at the mouth. The news made its way across the Atlantic faster than wildfire. Behind the gates of Buckingham Palace, aides scrambled, phones buzzed, corridors whispered. This wasn't just another royal squabble, it was a detonation. King Charles, already battling the weight of age and monarchy, was briefed immediately. His face tightened, the fatigue of years deepening in his features. He had endured decades of royal scandal. But this, his youngest son throwing out his wife, was something else entirely. He murmured to his aides, it was always going to come to this. And what of William? The heir to the throne, Harry's once beloved brother turned bitter rival, was reportedly unsurprised. According to palace insiders, when told the news, William shook his head, muttering, he finally sees it. It wasn't joy. It wasn't cruelty. It was the resignation of a brother who had warned Harry years earlier, only to be shut out for it. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, was said to have reacted with quiet sadness. For the children, she whispered to a confidant. Always, her mind went first to Archie and Lilibet, the innocents tangled in this storm of betrayal and ambition. Princess, and, ever the blunt voice of the monarchy, reportedly scoffed. We all knew it wouldn't last. Best it's over now. The palace war room was activated. Advisors debated how to handle the inevitable storm. Should they release a statement? Should they remain silent and let the tabloids feast on the carcass of Harry and Meghan's marriage? The decision, as usual, leaned toward silence. But silence, in this case, was louder than words. Meanwhile, in California, Harry sat alone in his study, the diary open once again. Outside, cameras began to gather at the end of the driveway. Helicopters circled faintly in the distance. The fortress of Montecito was no longer a refuge. It was a stage. And Harry, whether he liked it or not, was center stage. Audience, pause here. Can you imagine being Harry in this moment? You've lost your marriage, you've exposed your wife's darkest confessions, and now the world is watching with popcorn in hand. Could you bear it? Could you walk outside, knowing millions are dissecting every step? Or would you hide, letting the silence crush you? Harry didn't hide. He called his inner circle. Old friends he still trusted. Lawyers. Advisors. And yes, eventually, the palace itself. He needed to protect Archie and Lilibet. That was all that mattered now. But here's where the fallout grew darker. Because Meghan wasn't hiding either. By the next morning, leaks began to appear, not from Harry, but from Meghan's side. Her allies whispered to friendly journalists. The narrative began to bend. Meghan hadn't been expelled, they claimed. She had left. She had chosen to step away from the toxic environment Harry had created. She was the victim once again. But Harry held the diary, the smoking gun, and he knew it was only a matter of time before its contents leaked. Once the world read Meghan's own words, her cold confession that she never loved him, her obsession with titles, her vow to outshine Diana, there would be no spin strong enough to contain the explosion. Back in London, senior royals braced themselves. Would Harry go public? Would Meghan? The monarchy's fragile reputation, already strained by years of scandal, now hung in the balance once again. And the public? They devoured every update. Social media turned into a battlefield. Team Harry hashtags trended worldwide, praising him for finally seeing the truth. Team Meghan hashtags retaliated, claiming he was smearing her to win sympathy. Memes flooded timelines. Late-night comedians cracked jokes. TikTokers dramatized the diary entries like soap opera scenes. It was chaos. But beneath the noise, one question echoed louder than the rest. What would happen to Archie and Lilibet? Because in the end, this wasn't just about Harry and Meghan. It was about two children caught in a tug-of-war between a father desperate to protect them and a mother accused of using them as pawns. And every royal insider knew, custody battles between royals aren't fought quietly. They become wars of reputation, wars of evidence, wars of global scrutiny. And then, just when it seemed the scandal couldn't get any louder, another voice entered the fray. Not a tabloid, not a royal aide, but someone far more personal. One of Meghan's closest friends. A friend who had once defended her relentlessly, who had once stood by her side in interviews and public appearances. A friend who now, in the shadow of the diary's exposure, was ready to speak out. And what they revealed made everything 10 times worse. But when Meghan's own friends began to turn on her, when they confirmed that the diary wasn't just a one-off, but part of a larger truth, Harry realized the fallout had only just begun. In the world of power couples, loyalty is everything. Or at least, that's what Meghan believed. She cultivated her circle like a gardener tending roses, pruning, watering, ensuring that only the most useful, the most flattering, the most devoted voices remained close. But loyalty is fragile when the spotlight burns too hot. And in Meghan's case, that spotlight had turned toxic. When news broke of the Montecito meltdown, Meghan expected her inner circle to rally to her defense. Some did at first. They whispered to sympathetic journalists, painted her as a woman trapped in a loveless marriage, spun stories of Harry's temper and fragile ego. But others, those who had been quietly sidelined, those who had seen cracks in the facade, began to waver. And wavering turned into leaking. The first blow came from someone unexpected, an old Hollywood acquaintance. Not a best friend, not an inner confidant, but someone who had known Meghan long before royalty. They claimed, off the record at first, that Meghan's diary was not an anomaly. It was consistent. She always wrote things down, they revealed. She treated her life like a screenplay. Every step was planned. Every relationship was a scene. The press devoured it. A screenplay. Suddenly, Meghan's life was framed not as a love story, but as a production. The diary wasn't seen as a one-off outburst. It was evidence of a script she had been writing for years. But the real explosion came when someone closer to her, someone she had called a friend, broke ranks. This friend, once one of Meghan's loudest defenders, now whispered to journalists, "Harry isn't lying. The diary is real." And it's not the first time she said she didn't love him. The words spread like wildfire. Harry sat in Montecito, stunned, as he watched his phone light up with new headlines. For the first time, Meghan's allies were not just defending her, they were confirming him. His pain, his rage, his fury at the diary, validated by the very people who used to protect her. Audience, think about this. How devastating must it be when even your own friends can't keep up the lie anymore? What would that tell you about the truth you've discovered? The leaks didn't stop there. Another insider claimed Meghan had often spoken about Harry's vulnerability, calling him easy to handle and predictable. The exact same words Harry had read in the diary. Coincidence? Hardly. She knew his weak spots, the insider explained. She used them. The panic attacks, the grief about Diana. Those weren't things she comforted him through. They were things she exploited. She knew how to turn his pain into her advantage. Harry's blood boiled as he read it. The betrayal deepened. Not only had she written it in secret, she had spoken it aloud to her friends. It wasn't a moment of frustration scribbled in a diary. It was a worldview, a pattern, a strategy. And the more friends turned, the clearer the picture became. Meghan's carefully crafted image of the victimized Duchess, the misunderstood woman wronged by the crown, began to collapse. In its place, a new image emerged, the manipulator. The actress who treated her marriage like a role, her children like props, her husband like a vehicle. But here's where it got even more dramatic. One of Meghan's closest confidants, a name well known in Hollywood circles, reportedly admitted that Meghan had spoken of being bigger than Diana long before the diary was ever written. She always said she would rewrite the royal narrative, the friend confessed. She wanted to be remembered as the one who broke the monarchy apart and built her own empire from its ashes. Harry sat in silence as he heard this secondhand, his heart heavy, his mind racing. The words he once thought might be exaggerations in a diary were now being echoed by others, friends confirming the darkest parts of her ambition. And then came the cruelest twist. Another friend leaked that Meghan had once joked about her marriage to Harry in private. She'd say things like, "He's sweet, but he's no CEO." Or, "At least he comes with a title." We laughed, but I don't think she was joking. That was the dagger, because laughter cuts deepest when it exposes truth. And for Harry, knowing that the woman he loved joked about reducing him to nothing but a title, it was unbearable. Audience, ask yourself this. If people who once swore to protect your spouse suddenly began confirming your worst suspicions, what would you do? Would you feel vindicated? Or would you feel even more broken, knowing the betrayal wasn't just yours to see? It was known all along. Harry's vindication came with no joy. There was no satisfaction in being proven right. Only grief. Grief that so many had known, and yet no one had warned him. Grief that he had defended Meghan to his family, to his brother, to the world, while behind closed doors, her friends whispered the truth. And yet, the leaks had an unintended consequence. They didn't just damage Meghan. They lit a fire in Harry. For the first time in months, he didn't feel paralyzed by betrayal. He felt clarity, power, direction. Because if Meghan's own friends were confirming what he had read in that diary, then he had the upper hand. He had the truth, and he could finally use it. Harry called his lawyers again. He called his advisor.